Okay, good morning, everybody, to today's meeting of the Audit Committee. I am Councillor Alan Alvey, Chairman of the Audit Committee. I would now like to hand over to Democratic Services to read the housekeeping note.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. Please use your microphone when speaking and remember to switch it off. Please switch any mobile devices to silent. If the fire alarm rings, please leave the room immediately and use the nearest fire exit. Do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point in the car park. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to take this opportunity to welcome Councillor Wade onto the committee. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Davis, who has left the committee, for his contributions over the period of his membership. Please would members introduce themselves during the meeting, if not already introduced. Can I have apologies?
Chairman, we've received apologies from Councillor Janet Richards and Caroline Rackham.
Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda, can we approve the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of January? Everybody happy? Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. Does any member have any interests to declare? No. Public participation. There are no members of the public present. So we move on to item 4, which is the fraud, anti-bribery, etc. policies review, where I'm hoping Ryan is going to give us a lead on this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Ryan Stevens, Service Manager for Revenues, Benefits and Customer Services. The existing anti-fraud, bribery and corruption strategy and whistleblowing policy were last reviewed in 2021, and although remain fit for purpose, it's good practice to review these documents every 3 years. So we've recently undertaken a full review of these policies. We've also had the Southern Internal Order Partnership review the policies as well. So following that, there have been some minor amendments to both documents, mainly to reflect changes in procedures. Nothing fundamental in the legislation has changed. The anti-fraud, bribery and corruption strategy supports our commitment and culture of tackling fraud, bribery and corruption with a strong emphasis of prevention. This is underpinned by our fraud risk surveys, which consider the risks, mitigating factors and any actions that need to be undertaken. These are reviewed annually by each service, or sooner if there's a change in anything within those services. There's also a range of other policies to support our approach to preventing fraud, and they're listed in the document. The whistleblowing policy ensures an open culture where staff are encouraged to report suspected wrongdoing and where reports are thoroughly investigated. And the policy details our approach to whistleblowing and the potential outcomes. Once both these are approved, they will be communicated to staff, both on our intranet and via staff comms. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Malcolm Wade. Brian, in the last council, there was a well-publicised case in the Housing Maintenance Department that went to court. Was this policy produced before that and modified? Because there was some discussion that there would be some win-learns from that case. I just want to know how, because forgive me new to this committee, it's a question I've always wanted to ask this. So, was this one in place before, or did it come about after, or was there one in place before that was modified, or have we not actually modified anything?
So both these policies were last reviewed and approved in 2021, so they aren't new policies. And again, we have taken the opportunity to reflect, not just on that, but on a range of issues to see, does anything else need changing? As I said, all service managers have the fraud risk survey. So each year they are reviewed, they look at all their services, what are the risks with fraud, error, what actions need to be undertaken, what new processes need to be implemented. So they're always thoroughly reviewed.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any? Yes, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, whistleblowing, I'd have thought most people, you're saying you're discouraging people becoming anonymous when they whistleblow. I'd have thought that's the more usual process. But you've got this Protect scheme. Is that used quite often? Is that a common way of whistleblowing?
We don't keep statistics on those that contact Protect. That would be obviously between the whistleblower and Protect. We wouldn't have that data available. Going back to the other point, we prefer people to not be anonymous just so we can have that conversation, gather that information with them. Obviously, if it's anonymous, it could make any investigation a bit more difficult, but we're trying to encourage that open environment where people can come forward in confidence, knowing and any approach is treated in the strictest of confidence and will be fully investigated.
So am I wrong in saying that people don't mind coming forward? They're quite happy with the system. Anonymity isn't their main worry with a whistleblowing.
No, I mean, thankfully, we don't have many of these. And we haven't had issues with people wanting to remain anonymous. Again, that's their decision. So we encourage people not to be, but if that's their choice, then that's their choice. We will still thoroughly investigate any approach.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, the recommendation is that the Audit Committee approve these two documents, the anti-fraud strategy and the whistleblowing policy. I take it we approve? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 5, External Auditors Annual Report. So I'm going to ask Simon to run us through this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So this is our final report for the 23-24 audit year. I will take the report as read, but I'll go through its contents in summary. So in summary, it doesn't tell you anything new over and above the audit results report that we brought to the January meeting of the committee, but it does summarise the findings from the work that we've undertaken in the year and includes a full narrative commentary on value for money, which wasn't in the audit results report. So as you know, we completed a very large proportion of the work we would usually undertake on a financial statements audit, but disclaimed our audit report largely because of the disclaimed audit report issued in the 22-23 year and the impact that has on brought forward balances and in-year movements. We did not report on exception by VFM, so we had no issues to bring to your attention around the Council's VFM arrangements. Our narrative commentary starts on page 15 of the report, page 49 of the papers. We also include a summary of the Council's value for money arrangements by the various value for money sub-criteria in Appendix A of the report. The report does contain our proposed final fee, and that's set out on page 38 of the report, page 72 of the papers. So for 22-23, public sector audit appointments have now determined a final fee of £19,000 for the value for money work that was undertaken. That's been accepted by the council. We're proposing a scale fee variation for 23-24 as set out in the report for a small number of out of scope work areas. I think that's all I wanted to say, but very happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got one, but I'll see if anyone else has got questions. Okay, I have a question on, I think it is on page 40 of the pack, where there is a statement that reads, in the third paragraph down, it says, due to delays in receiving audit evidence in sufficient time before the backstop date. Can you just clarify that perhaps? And then I will ask Alan Bassoon to comment.
So the section of the report that you flagged basically reflects what we had in our auditor's report, in our audit opinion. So the items in bullets are the areas where we couldn't get assurance because of the impact of the backstop. There was one further area where we completed 95% of our work on income and expenditure. We couldn't get final evidence, or we didn't have sufficient time to get final evidence in relation to a very small number of income items. So that narrative was included in the audit report. So that reflects some delays in being able to get the evidence to support them, and the fact that we had a hard backstop date that we couldn't go beyond.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, what it's not, Chairman, it's not a reflection on the team not being quick in their responses to the external auditor. I think we've got a really good sound relationship with EY. The team are responsive. Obviously, it's quite tricky at times just because of the timeliness now of these audits. But yeah, it's not delays caused by our responses.
And you're happy, Simon, that you're getting, the information, because you read that and it suggests that there's been a problem, and I want to be reassured that there is no problem.
I can reassure you that there is no problem. We have a very good relationship with finance. We do flag some areas where we think there's scope to make efficiency that would make the audit more quicker to deliver. So we flag recharges in particular on the ledger, and that's something that we think, if that could be eliminated, we could do our work more quickly. So I would flag that. But as Alan says, we have an excellent working relationship, and the quality of responses to our queries, the quality of evidence that we get, and the willingness to work with us in delivering the audit are all very good.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think we're asked just to note this report. Is everyone happy? Move on. Okay, thank you. Right, we now come to item 6, the external audit plan. Simon, again.
So we move very quickly from 23-24 to 24-25, and we have now started our work on planning the 24-25 audit. We aim to issue an audit plan to management by the end of April, and we'll bring that audit plan to the next meeting of this committee. We're still, unfortunately, within the reset arrangements in 24-25, and the statutory backstop date for the completion of 24-25 audits is the 27th of February 2026. However, we want to have all of our work done in 24-25 by the end of this calendar year at the latest, done and reported by the end of this calendar year at the latest, because you need timely assurance. That's the point of the reset. We want to catch up. There's one other change that I'd draw to your attention, and that's around value for money in 24-25. So the National Audit Office issued a new Code of Audit Practice in November 2024 that requires all external auditors within the regime to report value for money arrangement findings in an auditor's annual report, like the one I just talked about, by the end of November annually. So you will see that auditor's annual report and completion of our value for money work earlier. It will come to you before the end of November. So that's just a high-level summary of where we are with planning at the moment. You'll get the full plan at the next meeting of the committee.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Bassoon, do you want to comment on that at all? Are you happy?
No further comment from me, Chairman. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone got any questions? No? Okay, then we'll note that. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to item 7, the internal audit progress report from Anthony. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. So I'm pleased to provide you a progress update in terms of where we are in delivering the 24-25 internal audit plan. And this reflects the position as at the end of February. So as you'll note on page 76 and 83 of the agenda pack, at the time of reporting, 60% of the reviews were at least a draft report stage, with the remaining 40% in progress. And bar two of those reviews, they were all at field work at the time. Things have moved on and now everything is at field work. What we've tried to incorporate following feedback from the previous committee, especially from yourself, Chair, is just to include on the right-hand side within the main body of the report the actual sort of status of some of those reviews. So hopefully you're assured that there's several pieces of work that the field work's been completed. It's currently under management review, and once we've had the close of audit meetings, we'll be able to issue reports over the forthcoming weeks. Again, as noted on page 76 in the covering report and 91 of the agenda pack, there have been 4 proposed deferments into the next financial year that were requested by the management team. And whilst I don't want to jump onto the next agenda items, they have been considered and included within the 25-26 proposed internal audit plan. So also pleased to note there have been no new limited or no assurance reviews to bring to the committee's attention since the last progress report. What we have also included, is noted on page 77 and page 84 to 85, is with regards to the management actions. At the time of reporting, 10 of those actions have been completed, and following approval of the whistleblowing policies, that's now moved on to 13, so hot off the press. What we've also included, especially on page 85, is the proposed approach for some of those long-standing actions. So obviously we've been reporting them as overdue to the committee for some time. I think looking back at some of those actions and considering them within the current sort of context facing the council, it may well be that the actions that were originally agreed, alternative actions been taken to address the main risks identified, and actually it's never going to be completed because something else has been done. It could be that the actions are still absolutely relevant and we just need realistic timescales based upon the current circumstance of the council when they're going to be completed. If some of those actions, for example, are going to be taken forward within wider corporate initiatives and the best way to track those through, or whether or not, based upon the current situation, some of those residual risks are now going to be accepted and those actions will be effectively not implemented and agreed that they're going to come out. So what we've agreed is that we'll work with the management team over the next couple of months and bring a full update to the next committee to actually say this is now going to be the position going forward with these actions, and there'll be full transparency about what has been taken to either address the issues, if any residual risks are going to be accepted and what those are. So hopefully that's a pragmatic approach on trying to clear some of the long-standing actions in particular that have arisen. So I'll pause there, Chair, but more than happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you for that. I shall see if anyone's got any questions. Councillor Wade.
Thank you. I'm looking at the assurance element of this. That is quality assurance following procedure. Is that correct? Well, you've got substantial, limited and reasonable. But if we have a process, either you follow it or you don't. This is just my QA background. So how can it be reasonable if it's either follows it or it doesn't? So I don't understand why we have yes or no. It's just very straight. They're following procedure or they're not. But reasonable and limited would really worry me, especially with risk management. I think you've already discussed that. But why do we put that in? Is it not clear if they're working procedure or they're not? Can you enlighten me to that, please?
Certainly can do. I'll refer you to agenda page 82, where those definitions are included. But just as a bit of a wider context, one of the roles of audit is to obviously look to the frameworks of governance, risk management and control. and to sort of see, can those frameworks be strengthened in any way based upon our assessment, and also compliance with those frameworks. So it's a sort of double-edged sword, if you like, but certainly we're there as a tool to help the organisations move forward, because obviously the world never sits still and things are constantly sort of moving forward. So really with those assurance ratings, with substantial, what we're saying is that based upon our assessment, there are no opportunities that we've identified where things could be improved, and there's really strong compliance with things as they're laid down. When it comes to reasonable, it's sort of things are generally broadly okay, but there's either opportunities to improve, either with compliance with the laid down procedures and frameworks, or to sort of continue to enhance and strengthen those frameworks. When it comes to the limited and the no assurance opinions, that's where we either find significant deficiencies within the actual sort of framework or compliance with the frameworks, or, you know, a complete absence of those sort of frameworks to really address the issues that should be achieved by the areas that we're looking at. So there's sort of standard definitions, there's sit for standard definitions that we're required to adopt. It's not as easy as saying a yes, no answer, I think. It's all about enhancing and improving things and moving forward.
Do you ever find that your quality assuring our procedures and policies, and you find that what's actually happening in the field is better, and we need to change the base policy to reflect, because their working practice is an improvement on what we were expected? Does that come? Do you have that occasionally?
Yeah, on occasion we find that you know the underlying policies and procedures haven't kept up with good practice. What's usually more usual is that some of them aren't really quite followed and adhered to in practice, and it's then sort of, you know, that the management team need to make the decision about, you know, the balance between pragmatism, but actually our corners being cut and it is undue risks coming in. But yeah, it's all part of that process and that dialogue that we undertake when we're undertaking our reviews. It's not just a case of, well, that's what it says on paper, so you should do that. It's to try and be pragmatic and actually get under the skin of the issue and really sort of, okay, why is that in that process? What risk or what are you trying to basically eliminate by having that in there? And obviously for those key areas, it's really key that those risks are being managed to an acceptable level.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got any questions? I'll just ask one, which really is for Alan Bassoon, I think. This is on page 84, where we've had these number of overdue items that have been there for some time, have now a list, they're all going to be re-evaluated. And I take it from what Anthony was saying, that's going to happen in the next 2 months. Are you happy? We're going to meet that requirement, are we?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, they're very much a strong intention. By the time this report comes back to this committee for the June meeting, that you will see a much updated schedule and list that's more reflective of the actions that we're still going to continue. So yes. And
I hope a lot of them will be gone, will they?
Yeah, I think a lot of them will be gone. Yeah, just because of the passage of time. And I think where things have changed in the meantime that aren't necessarily 100% in accordance with the original action. So we just need to pick those things up and make sure that it's a nice clean list going forward.
Okay, thank you. Right, yes, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Again, just the point earlier taken, the limited risk management is quite a worry, I would have thought. That would take, obviously you're going to expedite your actions on that to sort of get that up above, but that is a worry. I think the only limited we have is on a risk management, which is quite serious.
Okay, I'm going to just say that the risk management is something that comes to this committee regularly. They've introduced a new procedure. EMT have introduced a new way of recording and monitoring risks. And I'm guessing that this has only just gone to internal audit. I'm sorry if I'm jumping in, but that's my understanding of the situation. So I would hope that Anthony in time, we'll review the new system and come back. Is that correct?
Yeah, so certainly when the outcomes of that review were reported back to the last committee if you wanted to sort of see some of the underlying detail. Certainly as part of it, at the time that we undertook the review, that was obviously some months ago, the council were in the process of completely changing their risk management framework. We're going through the planning process for the next financial year. We've now seen the majority of those service risk registers that have been completely updated. It's going to be an iterative process as they gradually get aligned to corporate priorities. But we've now seen that where previously a lot of those service risk registers were absent, they are now in place. They're always going to be honed. Certainly as well that the risk management framework, probably following on from Councillor Wade's conversation earlier, what was happening in practice wasn't really reflective of the policy. As you would have noted from the previous committee, that policy's now come through to yourselves with a new approach. So the new approach going forward is reflective now of current practice. We've had the confirmation that, again, 11 of those actions have been completed. One's pending. There's a couple of those actions that do need to be re-evaluated because with the change to the principal risk register now, a couple of the actions that they proposed to take are now no longer relevant because some of the terminology's changed and the principal risk register doesn't now have inherent and current risks, so can't be implemented. But we've again included that in the next financial year to really sort of follow up and say, okay, your policy's there now, but are those risks really being actively managed at both a service level and a principal level? And I think you'll note as well from our proposed plan, which is the next item on the agenda, and I can go through in a bit more detail then, a lot of the areas that were flagged within the principal risk register are incorporated in the plan for next year as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just checking when the next risk report comes to this committee. Alan, can you confirm that? I don't see it on the work plan.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chair. I think perhaps next time we have a meeting to review the work plan, we'll agree and discuss where to put the risk, the next general.
Supposed to come every 6 months, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in terms of the principal risk register. Yeah, so we'll reflect that on an updated work programme.
Thank you. Right, anybody else, any questions to Anthony? Okay, thank you. We have to note that, so noted. And now we come on to the internal audit charter and plan. Again, Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. If it's probably easier, shall I take the charter first and then pause for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, as you'd have noted from the committee back in January, where we provided an update with regards to the fact that the global internal audit standards were coming into effect in about 13 days' time now. And so what we've been required to do is completely go through all of our documentation to make sure it's aligned to the new standards. So whilst you've received a charter for the last 10 or so years, and there's been a requirement for one, the charters have had to undertake a considerable revision to make sure that they're aligned to the new standards. And we're sort of confident that all of those new requirements have been included within the new charter. So usually in previous committees, for those members that have had the delight of sitting on this committee and seeing the charter several times, usually I would say it's exactly the same as last year. This time it needs to be considered as a brand new document. Now, the Charter's really quite an important document to ourselves because it includes all of our authorities, roles and responsibilities. It outlines the sort of information that you can receive from, we'll receive from ourselves, that we, use all information that's given to us appropriately. And so it's a very key document, so it really sets the framework for internal audit. Now, a lot of the themes and a lot of the areas are very similar to previous charters, but there are several areas that, with the new global internal audit standards coming in, have been considerably expanded and built upon. So in particular, there's a far greater and expanded narrative in and around Section 3, which is the internal audit mandate. The authority, roles and responsibilities in Section 4 has been significantly expanded to reflect the new GIS requirements. Internal audit resources is again been significantly expanded to include elements of HR, technological and financial resources. And there's been a number of new extra sort of sections and further detail that's been added as well. I don't think there's anything in there that would probably think, oh no, if it's that there, other than that there's a lot more detail, but I think it really sort of hopefully gives you the assurance of how we will operate and what we expect from both officers and members as well.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's, you know, I don't see any problem with it. Has anyone got any questions on this new charter? No? Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I don't see a problem. So I think we're asked to input and approve it. I think we can take it. We approve the charter. Can we just now talk about the risk-based plan?
Sorry, certainly we will do. So I'm pleased to bring the proposed plan for the forthcoming financial year, again for you to have your input into and to hopefully formally approve ahead of the financial year starting. So again, the plan, it's similar to what we've previously provided to yourselves in terms of format, but obviously not content. But again, it has been compiled to make sure that, as far as we feel, it does meet the requirements, which, when it comes to planning, the new global standards put a lot more rigour and formalisation around things that we have previously always done, but we just need to evidence it a lot more as well. So when we've pulled the plan together, we've met with obviously the executive management team to discuss the plan. Once we'd sort of met with all of the sort of service managers and their respective assistant directors where possible to really gain their insights into the areas that perhaps they have concerns, areas of change, areas of significance that does need to be included. When we've pulled the plan together, we've taken full account of the updated principal risk register and now the new sort of service risk registers, as I've said, to really make sure that our plan proposed activity is really looking at those key sort of risks facing the organisation, the risk mitigations that the management team feel are in place, and then we can come along and obviously provide the assurances that yes, those mitigations are in place and are effective and operating, or not, as the case may be. So some key sort of bits just to draw to your attention. So on page 121 of the agenda pack, the conformance to the standards just reflects all of the remaining sort of changes. And just to flag that it's a requirement that we're externally assessed once every 5 years by an independent body to be compliant against the standards. And as we've previously sort of mentioned to the committee, what we didn't want to do is bring that assessment forward and be assessed against the old standards that we know are fully compliant with. We're, wanting to make sure that we're on the soundest footing as possible, so we will still be commissioning that external assessment against the new standard in the late summer or autumn. Page 122 of the pack gives a little bit more detail about how we've developed the plan. There's some extra requirements as reflected within the charter that sort of outlines a little bit more detail about the resources on page 123 and 124 of the pack. And again, just to reiterate our independence as well. But really, I think the meat on the bones is the remainder of the plan, which is the individual sort of titles and proposed scope, which is where we would hopefully give yourselves the assurance that we are covering all of those key areas that you would expect, but also, you know, welcome to take any input if there is any omissions where you feel there may be. My sort of final point really is just to really iterate that we always maintain that the plan needs to remain fluid, to basically make sure that it keeps up to the changing needs of the organisation. And I think over the next couple of years, that's going to be even more pertinent than usual. So if there are any proposed plan changes that do come along throughout the year, then we'll always transparently report those through to the sort of senior management team and then onwards to your committee as well, as we have done in previous years. Happy to pause there and take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody? Yes, Councillor Grissell.
Thank you, Chair. In previous meetings, we've discussed the fact that recruitment was a problem and you assured us that you had enough staff. Is that still the case with all these changes that you have to deal with?
Again, recruitment will be and will continue to be an ongoing challenge. We obviously make sure that we have sufficient staff to maintain our audit plans. Should I have any significant concerns that we think they're really going to impact upon the delivery of the audit plan, then we will come back to the committee accordingly and advise. But yeah, it seems to be recruitment is just a constant challenge, and I think with the uncertainty the local government's going to be facing over the next couple of years, recruitment and retention's going to, you know, be at the top of our agenda always. But we're confident that we will be resourced accordingly to deliver our plans across all of our partners, which I think runs to about 12,000 person days, about 9 to 10,000 audit days in total. But with such a partnership of that size, you know, it's always a complete juggling act.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. If in the plan, is there spare capacity to deal with this scenario? You're looking at an area and you discover an anomaly. You report it, management say, right, we're going to fix this. Do you then plan to go back a period later to check that it has been improved? And is that capacity to do that in the plan?
Yeah, so where we've identified previous significant issues, so for example, risk management, as we were talking about earlier, we formally include that within the plan. We don't specify to the committee what planned days we're going to take on each respective review. The reason being is obviously what we want to do is maintain that flexibility. So if we do, during the course of an audit, identify issues and we think we should spend more time than what we was originally planned, it's at my complete discretion that I'll say, okay, we'll allocate X amount more days to that individual review. Over the course of time, and as you'll see from previous committees, there's always areas where the time for review suddenly becomes no longer relevant and come out of the plan. And that kind of gives me my flexibility that if I do need to allocate additional resources to a particular area, I can do. Should I find myself in the situation where everything in the plan is still going to be going ahead and I feel there's insufficient resources, I've got kind of two options. I can either go to Alan and the management team and actually say, look, you know, we feel we need more additional resources, or alternatively, we've got these areas within the plan. A couple of these are probably not as high risk as some of these other areas. We can either take a couple out of the plan and consider them for future years and dedicate that resources to it. Or if the management team wish for all of those reviews to continue, then I'm sure Alan can scratch behind the sofa and find a couple of coins and find the extra to pay us.
Okay, thank you. I have one question on page 130 where you list engagements that would have been performed if additional resources were available. So that suggests that there is a restriction on resources. Now, one of those items I'm, personally, I think I would like to see it included, which is the antisocial behaviour. Now, in some areas of the district, that is a concern, and I'm not quite sure, when it says review identified by the service area to assess the arrangements, I'm not sure what those arrangements are, but I would welcome your view on that.
Certainly. So these 4 reviews in particular, the areas that were flagged through our planning process from sort of direct areas that were identified by the management teams. I'm kind of including them there. My risk assessment against these particular areas at this point in time was that they were lower risk than the areas that have been included in the plan. Should areas come out of the plan, then I think this is going to be our go-to list of those areas that can be considered first. With regards to the antisocial behaviour, and again, Alan may have some more on this, as far as I'm aware, a draft kind of policy and framework has been developed, and over the next 2 or 3 years, there's a planned programme of activity about what the team plan to do to then implement that draft framework that has been developed. I think at this stage, if we looked at it now, all we would say is, okay, yeah, you've got a draft policy and framework that you're looking to develop, and you've got a clear action plan to then enact that over the next sort of 2 or 3 years. I think from an audit perspective, it's probably a little bit too early for us to look at that. I think it would be really prudent that we either pick up a lot later in the year to see how that progress against implementing that action plan is coming along, or probably more likely look at it next year, because hopefully then you've got the proposed framework that the council's going to have to take forward over the next few years, and we can actually assess you against something that's partially in place.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Alan Bassoon just to comment on that. I mean, which section does this come under? Which portfolio, if you like, does this come under?
So it's housing and communities.
Right.
And obviously we have almost 2 slight strands to this. So we've got our role as corporate landlord in terms of housing revenue account. So that's where we've got the draft policy working its way through at the moment. But as you know, we're very active in terms of the community safety partnership and take a role there. And again, I know that there was a fairly full report to the last overview scrutiny panel on the actions for that group. So yeah, I absolutely support Anthony. It feels like we're in a good place actually at the moment in terms of knowing where we want to get to, and the timing just wouldn't feel right for audit to come in and play a role. But it's there on the backstop list, and as Anthony says, it's a fluid programme. So if we decide partway through the year that we want to drop something, that would naturally be one that we'd look to potentially go to.
On the plan, I'm assuming, I mean, Alan has sort of spoken here, but the EMT are signed up to this, are they? So you're going to support, you're going to work with internal audit on this plan?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, recognising that it is a very full plan.
Yes.
We're talking about a lot of reviews here, but no, absolutely, we've committed and agreed with the timing of the delivery of the reviews as well. So that's being relayed back through to our teams and making sure that they are prioritising and know that this is coming.
Okay, thank you. Everyone happy that we approve that plan? Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Right, we move on to item 9, financial regulations review. So I'm going to ask Alan Bassoon just to talk through this.
Yep, certainly, thank you, Chairman. So yeah, just by way of a brief overview. So yeah, good practice to regularly review our financial regulations just to make sure that they are fit for purpose. The last review was essentially 12 months ago, so a fairly light touch review 12 months ago, just updating some changes to structures. What we've opted to do this year, just to make it nice and easy for the committee to see where the changes are, we've got given a track changes version as Appendix 3, so you can see precisely where the changes have been made. I think the main change really to reflect on is our sort of reporting thresholds, and at what point can decisions be made and by whom. So we've not only looked to just clarify actually who the decision maker is, but also just reflecting that perhaps even now, perhaps more than ever, we want to, potentially give ourselves a little bit more opportunity to be a little bit more flexible in terms of moving some resource around to align to our corporate priorities and align to work and requirements, I guess, off the back of LGR as and when they arise. So just taking stock really to amend the thresholds. What we've also done is made sure we've got the right degree of consistency with contract standing orders. And now we've gone through this process, the next step, and Tanya and the team have been engaged in this process as well, as just then reflecting these changes through the Constitution, just to see whether there are any then key decision thresholds that we then want to see through as well. So everything's kind of lining up quite nicely now. I suppose if I could just touch on the reason for the recommendation for the delegation. I mean, really that is just to make sure that by the time this goes through to council, we can pretty much just present the clean version. So, we will just accept all those track changes. We may find a couple of other little minor grammatical as we go through. So we're not intending to make any further changes particularly, but it just enables us to take this version, nice clean one, as it goes up through to the council.
Right, thank you for that. Anyone? Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Just looking at the things, the financial side, you've upped from 250 to 450 the criteria for that particular level. Is that in conjunction with the portfolio holder for finance to agree that?
Yes. So these changes have been consulted with Jeremy as portfolio holder, and he was happy with everything that was being presented through to the committee for approval.
The other thing that when you look at that graph, you've got the decision maker before the consultants, and I don't know how you could change it around so it follows logically.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, but I think in terms of the use of the letters and hopefully the colours, I think it does draw the eye. I think actually in terms of where that decision maker is, but yeah, I take the point. There's always an alternative presentation.
Okay, I have one question, and I think we talked about this a year ago, but I can't exactly remember when. But the question is, if you look at, for example, the chart on page 136, which is the authorisations required, my concern. I'm going to try it. It's difficult to explain, but if you take a project, for example, that is say in the bracket 25,000 to 150 or 50,000 to 150, you have a certain, decision authority setting, and then you have a supplementary. Which could be up to, say, another 100,000. If you add the two together, it takes you up to a further level. And it may be pedantic, but my view is that if you have that, then that authority should go to the next level. You see what I mean? Now, I don't think that is covered in the regulations, that situation.
It is covered in the regulations.
Oh, well,
so, yeah,
I didn't read them properly then.
So it's not made potentially clear in the summary table, but in the regulations themselves, we talk about the rules of aggregation.
Right.
So, yeah, so if there is a situation where it's a supplementary estimate 1 and then a supplementary estimate 2, actually you take the combined sum, and if that pushes it into the next threshold, then you have to follow the rules for the greater number.
Okay.
So that is covered as a specific regulation within the document.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's reassuring. Thank you very much. Anybody else got any questions? No? Okay. So I think we're asked to approve this, is that right? Get confused with all these recommendations. Where are we? Yeah, we're asked to approve the delegation and to recommend to council that the updated financial regs are approved. Are we happy to do that? Yeah, okay, thank you. We now come to item 10, regulation of investigatory powers, which is Tanya. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. This is your annual update on the Council's use of powers under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. It's similar to the update that you had last year, in that the Council has not used its powers over the last 12 months under the Act. The powers that the Council has now, as it says in the report, it relates to the Council when it's wanting to enforce or take any sort of enforcement action, and it wants to carry out covert surveillance in order to obtain evidence. Then there are steps that the Council has to go through in order to be authorised to undertake that surveillance. Those steps now include applying to the Magistrates' Court for authorisation, whereas historically, before changes some years ago, the Council used to be able to make its own authorisations, and councils did use these powers to a significant extent. That's now reduced because the thresholds for actually applying and going to court to obtain an authorisation are fairly high. If the criminal offence is concerned, need to be at a level, a threshold that legitimises that application. And most of the district councils' investigations will not reach that level. What we also do when we are investigating and enforcing is we tend to use overt surveillance. So if we go out there and we tell people we're putting cameras up, or we're going to be going around and inspecting or putting in noise equipment when we're looking at a noise complaint, that's overt. We're telling people we're doing that, and that goes in. So that's not covered by this procedure, which is why, in general, the council doesn't need to use it and avoids doing so. But we are required under the regulations to update members regularly and to make sure that you have oversight of any use. So were we to change our processes and decide that we did need to use them at any point, then of course you'd be updated on that. We also have to make sure that the officers are aware of those limitations, which we do. Any enforcement activity where we are looking at obtaining that sort of evidence, or we're going to court on criminal cases, comes through the legal services team, and then the evidence gathering and investigation is under the advice of the team. We'll be doing some updating training on enforcement generally, and we'll include this within it so that officers know that they can't just go out and undertake that covert surveillance without proper authorisation. As I say, the risks are very low. We don't use it at all at the moment, haven't needed to for at least the last 2 years. So unless you've got any questions, I hope that's sufficient, Chairman.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone got any questions? Oh, yes, Councillor Wade.
Yeah, really, when I read this, I was amazed. We can use covert human intelligence sources and all that means, but that's, the police know all about that. But that's not the question. Does monitoring of internal emails and internal IT usage come under this, or does this come under the IT regulations?
Yeah, any monitoring that we do of our staff, for example, on use of email, so it's inappropriate for all members, is all done openly. We have a policy that sets out when we do it and how we do it. So that's all on the IT policy. That's separate. If we did it in relation to an individual case, we would have to tell someone that we're doing. We wouldn't be able to do it covertly. If we did it covertly, it would be covered, because that would be covert surveillance. But the occasions that we are really clear in our policies, what we monitor. We don't monitor details of emails coming in. We might monitor use of sites that's picked up automatically through the IT security setup to ensure people aren't using unlawful sites and things like that. or getting emails in that could cause security issues. That's all set out in the IT use policies and IT security policies. So it's all very open, so it's not covered by this requirement.
This is probably a retrospective, but when we had the issue with the case that you weren't in the room when Councillor Wade referred to it earlier with the fraud, did we have any of these systems operating in at that stage, or was it something that has come in subsequently for that? And
in terms of that case, that was dealt with by the police as opposed to us as an enforcing body. So they will have used their powers to investigate that and take any surveillance or obtain any evidence they needed to. So we didn't investigate that case as a criminal case. But I'll have to defer to Alan on the details of that case because I'm not aware of the detail.
Yeah, to be fair, there's not really much I can add. Obviously, at the time, the employee was suspended and he was advised that we were going to be conducting an internal review. So again, that's over in terms of what we were using our powers.
I suppose just to clarify that, I mean, I'm just thinking about it. As it's covert investigations, the audit committee would not know about it until the event has happened and it's become public knowledge. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, the members' responsibility is about oversight of use of the power, and for you to be updated as we're, annually as to the use. But the decision around authorising use of that power would be for the court anyway, as part of a legal case that we were bringing. It may well be that were we dealing with such a case, it would be quite high profile and quite a high threshold. We would be potentially confidentially briefing a portfolio holder and yourself as chairman anyway that we were going to use those powers. And that would be a matter for the senior officers to consider. But it wouldn't be as a matter of course that you as members would be signing off on that process now.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Kent?
Sorry, on the same topic, supposing this took place, an event happened and it went through a process, would we review it if we found out there was some form of anomaly or the council was challenged by whichever individual? Would this committee then have a role to review it post the event?
Yes, if the council were challenged and it was used inappropriately or successfully, then that's the sort of report that you would receive. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We're just asked to note this report. I think we're happy to note. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tanya. Right, we come on to the work plan, item 11. And I suppose the first thing I'm going to ask is, looking through it, I do not see the risk report coming. So where does that get? When are we going to see that?
Yeah, no, as you covered earlier, Chairman, yeah, that is right. That is an omission at this point. I mean, the 6 monthly would put it into the June meeting.
Yeah.
The June meeting, as you can see, is a fairly packed meeting already. However, the preference would be to align to our policy. So I think if members can bear with us and have a fairly lengthy meeting in June, because there's no other papers really that don't warrant being on that June agenda.
Well, I'm afraid I think we should have it in June, because otherwise, because it's a new reporting system, which I had concerns over, and I would like to see the next version and see how it's working.
Yeah, consider it added, Chairman, for the June meeting.
Thank you. Has anyone else got any comments on the work plan, particularly for the next meeting in June, which I apologise is going to be a long one, but we will try and rattle through. Okay, everybody happy? Okay, thank you for that. Well, I think that concludes the meeting, so I declare it closed. Thank you very much.